All right, we are live. Good afternoon and welcome to Urban Fantasy PH. Now, while urban fantasy is a genre in books, and I chose that to be the name of the podcast because we live in an urban society, as writers, as artists, as creative people, we give readers and consumers wish fulfillment by way of our stories, which is, in a way, fantasy, but reflective of reality. And lastly, PH, because, hey, that's where we live, and this is where we create. So that explains the name of the podcast. My name is CJ Edmonds, and this is our second episode. Yoo-hoo! Second episode, yes. And
Congrats.
we are going to be speaking to a comic book reader, but now he's a comic book creator with his own series that's called Lindol. Now, while most definitely he is a fellow creative, he is also a doctor by day, a psychologist to be specific, and talk about multitasking. Perhaps we can learn a thing or two on how to maximize our time. And if he has steps for multitasking, I would love to hear about it. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Tedi Villasor, or should I say, Dr. Tedi Villasor. Hello.
Thanks for having me, CJ. It's a tremendous opportunity to be
Hey,
here
thanks for being here and
share,
for
share
taking the call.
with your listeners.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We've talked about the podcast before for the longest time, and as you are one of the first few people that I've talked to regarding it, so it kind of feels like, full circle in a way. It's like we were just talking about it, and now we're actually doing it. When it comes to creative pursuits, let's say to have your creation or pet project accepted and read by people, that definitely feels like full circle or a form of validation, right?
Right. It is. It's. I think there's a point in everybody's life wherein it is important to release that your creative side.
Yeah.
And that came for me a couple of years ago when I decided that I really wanted to put out the book.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
the first I'll give you guys many rules, and one my very first rule is
Yeah, well, we'll
have
get to the rules as well in a way, but I just want to get your take on it. That do you feel that validation is determined by people liking what you do, or do you have to validate yourself first as a creative person, regardless of how your product is received?
in I could not help but think that way. Like it's important that my work be loved by many,
Mm-hmm.
especially starting out. That would always be a touchstone.
Yeah.
But as you go through this, you're gonna have to realize that you have to write for yourself. So
Okay.
you
Right.
put out a product that you yourself would be willing to read and you'd be
Mm-hmm.
willing to buy.
Go.
Then that's a good place to start. So it's there are times that of course, if somebody doesn't like your work or doesn't see it the same way as you do, of course
Mm-hmm.
you'd feel bad. But you must always touch on that you have to write for yourself.
Right, and I'm sure we
Yeah,
both agree that validation also comes from, as you said, it comes from within, and it also means that whatever form or idea, whether it's in its inception, whether it be a comic, a TV series, a book, or a song, unpublished or unrefined, validation comes from the moment of creation, not from the moment of editing or when you finally have the finished product out, right?
it's important that you should get from conceptualization to actualization. Some people they get lost in the process and you never see it, you know, as a finished product. I consider a finished product, well now because of the pandemic, on a digital base, but a physical base, something you can hold with your hands. And the late Jerry Alangilan once said, you have to put it out into the world, warts and all. It'll never be perfect, but you
Yeah,
put it out there. You put the
people
product out
always have something to say about it.
there.
Now, the talk of inspiration has always been bandied about. We see and we read online how creatives are inspired by what they see or experienced in life, and it eventually inspired them to create the finished product that most of us have in our hands. As if by magic, you just conjure up the idea in your head, and poof, in a puff of smoke, it's just right there in front of you, and you have a book, or in this case, a comic book in your hands. While I know the answer to this, our listeners and viewers might not, but can you just tell us what inspired you to write Lindol? If you're wondering how it looks like, this is how it looks like. There you go. I'm not going to air. That's it.
That's the first issue. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much for supporting our book.
Hey,
Uh,
most welcome.
to answer your question, it's uh, as a psychologist, you get pegged into one box, and for the longest time, people would know you as from that box.
Hmm.
And I reached a point in my life where I wanted to do something that's independent of that,
Okay.
and I figured that would be it. That I would, not knowing anything about the local comic book industry, I would jump right in and learn on the fly, so to speak. Learn through osmosis, and I'm very fortunate to meet Randy Valiente, who is my co-creator and
Hmm.
the artist for Lindol.
Brilliant artist. Yeah.
And it is thanks to him that this book has gotten to where it's going. It's a joint effort on both of our parts, and
Great.
that helped. Yeah.
You
So I
explained.
wanted to. Yeah, I wanted to find an independent voice. So people would know me not as Teddy the psychologist, but as Teddy the creator.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I would gather that your work as a psychologist kind of like helps you in determining your characters and making sure you know what makes each and every one tick. Do you think that you have an advantage of that with regards to character building and character arcs because you're coming from a psychologist background?
Yeah, in terms of research, it
Hmm.
would help. It's like Michael Crichton,
Yeah,
the author of Jurassic Park. He is a medical doctor um, by trade, but he never practiced.
yeah, he
He
never did.
uses
Right.
he uses his medical knowledge as information basis for his books. So if a
Hmm.
doctor comes in onto the page, he can take on the voice of a doctor because
Yeah.
he has intimate knowledge of that particular area. So there's one character in Lindol who survives the apocalypse who's a psychologist. So there
I
may
saw
be some,
in
yeah,
well, we'll get to that psychologist in a while.
yeah,
I also like that you explain the history of what inspired you to write Lindol in issue one at the end of the comic with a full page of afterthoughts and commentaries that you call aftershocks, which I love that. And if there's also at the end, there's also a title of each issue at the beginning. So it's like a book ender, so to speak. So you have the title at the beginning and a little bit of addendum at the end. Issue one is called A Whole New World. Issue two is Renato Venancio. Issue three is the brothers Titulo, and the current issue, which is four, it's called Fate Accompli, which is Latin, and if you translate it to English, means to accept an occurred event as it is because you have no means to change it, and all you have to do is use it to your advantage. Now we'll get into the titles later, but in a nutshell, while the title itself speaks obviously about a calamity, but what exactly is Lindol all about?
Lindol is. I've asked this question a lot, but my answer changes. It
What?
changes a lot, especially after each issue comes out. But
Okay, so
Lindol is
we
a
will be
story.
getting the current
Now,
answer. So
now
yes.
currently, four people who are in search of 16 paintings by this
Mhm.
guy, Renato Venancio,
Yes.
ostracized master of the arts, in the vein of Amersolo.
Hmm.
So but we don't know about him. So there are intermittent earthquakes that are happening all over the world, but Lindol focuses on the earthquakes in the Philippines. It's a story that's based in the Philippines, and it answers the question: what would a Filipino do if faced with such a calamity?
Yeah.
Will they be able to rise above it? Think about it. All the Western movies, where does the problems usually happen? New York. So
Hmm.
now for this book, it's set here. It's set primarily here.
Was there ever a point wherein you figured, of setting it, let's say, in a fictitious area and not in the Philippines? Did you ever, think about it that way?
There, one of the things I really wanted was that it be set in the Philippines because I didn't feel that there were a lot of books that were set here. Maybe that come here for a short while and then they leave, that go someplace else. But I felt there was so much storytelling potential if it's based in the Philippines. Again, intimate knowledge also of the areas. I mean, that was my pitch. It was my pitch to Randy Valiente. If uh, the first 3 pages of Lindol, you open up in Rojas Boulevard,
Mhm.
by the bay, and then you move on to page 2 and page 3, and you have the splash page of EDSA.
That's
That was my pitch. That was my pitch to Randy, and he really, thankfully, and I'm very grateful, he took to it. So that is the hook, that it be set here, because I felt if it was set in a fictitious world or
mhm.
set someplace else, it wouldn't have the same tone. And I don't think I can use the name Lindol. It's
Yeah,
not
you
set in the
can't.
Philippines.
You can't. They say that every writer takes from their own lives, experiences that they put into their work. Characters are no different. And I was wondering, did you pattern any of the characters from your friends? Like the blogger Ray Ray at first glance, kind of like looks like you. And then there's also Dash with the hair. But also there
Like
is the clearest
4 months
reference.
ago.
Yeah, in issue
Yeah.
4, we talked about that. You referenced that character earlier on, but did you base your characters from real people that you know?
Honestly, no. But I referenced them from movie personalities that I like, or
Profiling.
a certain theme that I liked. So, for example, best friends Dash and Cam.
Hmm.
I took a little bit of a playful tone of Martin Riggs and Murtaugh from Lethal
Okay.
Weapon.
Yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of kind of banter and
Right.
play, like And I'm not talking the earlier part, Murtaugh and Riggs, when they got to know each other a little bit better. They have that kind of chemistry.
You can't have that kind of banter unless you've actually bonded with a certain person,
Right.
because you'll just be feeling each other out and not sure what line you throw out will be appreciated or if they'll get it.
Right. So those are of course, those are the core characters, but they're only introduced later on in the book, which gives us a time to introduce us to the what? How did I put it? This would be the Winston Zedmore or Peter Venkman of the group. That would be great.
Okay.
Now, from
That's
a
directly
storytelling
reference to Ghostbusters for those who are wondering who are these people that Ted is referencing. So these are characters from Ghostbusters. Speaking of real people, I'm intrigued about this painter and his work that you introduced in issue number 2, Renato Venasio. I was wondering, is he real or not? And in actuality, would you happen to have a favorite painter?
Okay. So I like Amar Solo a lot,
Okay.
and during his time, there were a lot of painters who were struggling.
Hmm.
That used canvases, and I'd hear about these stories, and until such time as they had their time, and they got famous, and they got
Yeah.
sought after. So to answer your question, Renato Venancio, if anybody were to think he was a real person, then I did a good job as a writer. Uh, he came up. He came up. I put him smack in the middle with Amanansala, Solo,
Hmm.
uh, a, a, a good friend, Franklin Kina, who is a current artist now. I put them all in the same category. So he just sort of
Okay.
like blends there. And we don't
So
hear about him
is
because
it
he's
you
off the
decided
chart.
to use paintings because they're easier to look for as compared to, let's say, sculptures? Like, I don't know, if it's going to be like based on Orlina, then just one earthquake will shatter everything else, because Orlina works with glass and he's my favorite local sculptor. But he works with glass. Uh,
These are my son. Yes. Yes.
hey, is Indy there?
All right.
Hi, Indy.
All right. Sorry, commercial break. Sorry,
That's okay.
guys.
That's okay. We're
In
live.
in 1 minute, he is asking for paper to draw. So I have to.
Okay.
It's a good
You
thing.
might have actually an artist on your hands there.
I hope so. I actually hope so. He said that he likes to draw. So, as I want to be a good parent and support the things that my kid likes.
Yeah.
All right. Uh, so there again. That's where the influence comes in. Thinking about the artists, and I always wondered, what if there was a message that was, written in the back of the paintings. This guy had a vision, and that he predicted like this stuff would happen because all of his paintings show a different side of the metropolis or of the country in ruin. So that would serve from a storytelling standpoint, since that's what your show is about. That's your MacGuffin. That's
there you go.
tells the story forward. That's why
Okay.
it's very important to establish that early on.
Yeah, you can't put a MacGuffin there like in the middle of anything. So it's like, eh.
That's your Ark of the Covenant. That's your Sankara stone. That's your Holy Grail and your
Yes.
Crystal Skull. Yeah.
All right, we got those references. Speaking of references, I love the the geeky lines that your characters would say. You got me, who's got you? Obviously, that's from Superman, and cats and animals, dogs living together, mass hysteria. It's from Ghostbusters. Was that earlier on something that you figured out? I want to get those geeky quotes in, or those one-liners, or those soundbites in.
Yeah, that is actually one of my staples. All my books have a little something like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So either it's embedded in one of the artist's drawings, or it's
and sometimes it just comes out, right? Sometimes there are quotes that you just pull out from the ethers while you're writing. And it's not something that you planned out and say that, on page 5 I need to have a quote from Ghostbusters. On issue 2, page 1, I have to have something that's from Superman. It's not like that. Sometimes it just pops out, right?
But it'll only pop out if you have a diversive knowledge of either reading or watching these types of movies.
That's another thing.
Don't have it.
Area got me laughing the first time I was reading it. Why? Because I actually also use that in one of my works. So it's
a good line.
It is a good line. We have we have to thank for that. So speaking of paintings, since we kind of are veering off into something else, but going back to paintings, let's quickly talk about the other half of the equation for a successful comic, and these would be the images behind it and support the story being told. How did you come to meet Randy, by the way?
Strangely enough, Randy was one of the speakers in Fully Book.
No.
Yeah, he was. I think it was the book of coaching that was released, and I was in attendance. I got to meet him. We became friends on Facebook, and I found out that he does a lot of urban sketching. And as you know, Lindol is a very visual book that has
very urban. Yes.
A lot of places and architecture, and I felt, when I asked him, I said, I think this book would be perfect for you, because he had that gift, and he has a certain his style for doing a book. It really fits the story to a T. I mean, I could not imagine somebody else doing Lindol at this point.
And so, we as well as the reader, we can't imagine, the drawings being written by visualized by anybody else except Randy. Shout out to Larry and Dion, who's joining us on Facebook. And you were saying that what would a Filipino do in times of an earthquake? He said probably faint. He said he's also reminded by the 30th anniversary of the Luzon earthquake back in July 16, 30 years ago. So, wow, he remembers that. Okay, good memory.
I still remember that. Yeah.
Who doesn't? Now, the images at times, I'm sure would come to Randy while he's sketching, or maybe something that's planned. But what exactly is your work process? Do you write the script first and then give him that, and he visualizes the drawing, or sometimes the drawing comes first, and you try to write a script around that?
The former. I usually write the full script. I be as descriptive as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
I provide images when I can. Sort of like, and this is what we're trying to go for this one. And then Randy does his magic. So at least he knows where I'm coming from. Then it's up to his creative process and how he wants to execute.
Clearly, any work of of creative process goes to a form of refinement or tweaking of sorts. For the initial issue and other subsequent issues, were there any plot points that you considered but you ended up not using?
No, I do plant Easter eggs from time to time. Something that I can always go back and draw from should it come up. So
Right.
one such would be the cover of issue 2 is a giant ship, and they
Yes.
refer the giant ship that through a tidal wave was
Issue
there you go.
two.
Yeah.
There's
So
back.
when you there the ship. So as you can see, it's on top of 2 buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk about it briefly. They admire it briefly, and they do mention that they haven't checked it out yet. So that
That
in
spells
the
danger
future
right there.
we can always go back to that.
If they decide, or if you decide to have another set of characters going up the building just to look at the ship or and see whatever treasure trove they can raid in there, that'll be another plot point for you.
We don't know what's there yet, but there's hopefully something
Oh,
there.
that'll be there. All right. Now that we've touched upon plot, how important is it for you to outline your plot? I know the industry terms plotter and pantser, wherein a person is more creatively instinctual and writes by the seat of his pants and discovers the story more as he goes along, as he writes. So while we usually hear this applies more to fiction, as when do you also plot your stories by issue, or do you allow yourself a little bit of modicum of discovery as you go along?
Modicum of discovery. Uh, issue issue 3 and issue 4 are testaments for that, because I wanted issue 3 to be actually 2 issues. But
Oh, okay.
when I looked at the pacing, there was no way anybody would want to read through it.
Issue
So
three.
it became a combination of issue 3 and issue 4. Then
Mm,
issue 4 and issue 5 closed the first arc of Lindol. I listened to a podcast recently by Deadpool artist Rob Liefeld,
okay.
and Rob said, and I think this will be beneficial. I think to a lot of your listeners, there is a 100 plus page requirement to make a relationship with your reader, to get your foot in the door in the industry if you're trying to break in. Um, it's That's your building currency with getting people to know that, oh, okay, this is the artist for Lindol, this is Lindol, this is the writer for Lindol. They get to not only people who are reading your work, but also your contemporaries in the local
Mhm.
comic book industry. They know that you're serious, because it's let's be honest, this is a passion project. It's really an endeavor of love. If we make money on this moving forward, that is truly a bonus. But the reality here is, you would only put something out like this if you really truly believe in it.
I
You
see.
have to believe in it. Yeah.
Was there ever a time wherein you considered maybe digital digital comic first before print, or has print always been the goal?
Print for me was very important, because that goes to the foundation of conceptualization to actualization. Actually holding a physical book in your hand doesn't matter
Yeah,
if it's five
we're all
pages.
tactile. We really want something that's physical. I mean, during this pandemic, there were some comics that I had to download online, but I figured I could have been just a tad more patient and just had it delivered to me instead of downloading it on my Kindle. So I have something physical to hold my hands and go back to whenever I want to. But by your own journey of discovery, I'm sure that being nominated, yes, Lindol is nominated. If in case you didn't know, was the least on your mind. For those who didn't know, they nominated back in 2018 and 2019 for the Komiket Awards, which is the biggest comics and art market here in Manila. Just to clarify, were you nominated for Best Comic or other categories that were specified?
For just to add to what you're saying, we have also been nominated for 2020.
Okay, there you go. Woohoo! Awesome.
So issue one was nominated for one of the five finalists for Best Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Issue three was nominated for Best Artist. That's Randy Valiente. I think they were like four or five of them. And issue four has been. We're still the nominations there. We don't know what category it is yet because of the pandemic. So
Right.
we are eagerly awaiting that, and hopefully by 2021 we're submitting issue five. Issue five released it last October, so we're hoping to put that in on the 2021 contest, and we hope we're blessed with another nomination. Hopefully,
And you still have time to kind of like change things if in case you want to.
Actually, issue six is 2/3 done already.
Oh yes, issue six.
Awesome. That's this next arc for Lindol. So if it was going to be compiled, the first five issues would be the first arc, and then issue six would be the start of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 would be the second arc. Yeah.
Are you envisioning hardcover or trade paperback is okay?
I'll be honest with you. I really want to do a hardcover, but it's going to be really limited. I take great pride in the books, and when I tell somebody that there's only 250 copies of them, there are only really 250 copies of them. It's not like, if we ever go to a second run, the cover will be different. Lindol it has met U.S. standards. It has been CGC graded and CBCS graded.
Nice.
We are part of we are registered. We have a registered ISSN number in the National Library of the Philippines. So we take our comics very seriously.
Yeah, you should. You should. I mean, you're a content provider and content creator. You should. I mean, it's not just putting a material out or comic out, but at least legally wise, that you are protected, right? So there, you released the comic. You've been nominated. People are liking it, going for issue after issue. Again, that's another form of validation right there. And when you were starting out, I was wondering, what advice were you given by fellow creatives and experts, and probably even from your own geek group when you wanted to start your own comic?
It wasn't easy finding people to talk about this topic because a lot of people usually talk about it, but it stops there. They're never really that serious. You become serious when you actually have product that's out.
Mm-hmm.
But the late Jerry Alangilan was very, very helpful, and I really learned a lot from him. A lot of people might just know him as the inker for Marvel.
Yeah.
But, he did so much more. He had a lot of independent work that it really resonates, and it's sorry, father duties. What's
all right? So part of it. I'm just glad that my own dogs are rather quiet.
I'm so sorry. These are the live events that we cannot control.
Oh yeah. And that's fun having broadcasting from your house. You'll always hear things in the background, the dogs, the kids, the neighbors fighting. No, just kidding.
The cats.
Yeah, the cats as well if you have one of those. So
the one thing I learned from Jerry is, again, I mentioned it earlier. You have to put your work out there, warts and all.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he talks about it, I always found it to be a very quiet person. So I always took the opportunity to listen to him when he would speak, during conventions. And whenever he'd talk about his work, it always start out from an idea. Like when he thought about Elmer, He was in his apartment before, and then he heard the chickens outside, and he said, "What if these chickens are actually just not sounds, and they're actually conversing?" And that built into a story that it took him several years to put
Finish.
everything together, and it was good enough for him to actually put out, and it is amazing.
I
It's
hope that particular comic is still out for people who would want to collect it. It's gonna be a collector's item now. That's
yeah.
for
His wife, Eileen,
sure.
you can find her. You can find her online. I think through Jerry's social media. You can get in touch with her.
Yeah.
I believe Secret HQ has copies of the books. So I know they have Elmer. I really hope they reprint Wanted, because that's how I got to know Jerry. Pulp magazine before reprinted Wanted. Portions of Wanted at the end of each of their magazines, and
Uh-huh.
I bought the magazines purely for the
Because of
oversized.
that.
Yeah. That's how I got to
Um,
know.
Apart from Lindol, I know you also have another comic that you released. So far, I think it's only one issue. I don't have it here. I think it's in the other house. I failed to bring it with me. But what is that other series all about?
The other series is called OB Sessions, which is
Hmm.
it's a portmanteau, a combination of two words. Like uh, um, what's two words?
Yeah,
Aldol. You put
yeah,
the two words together. That's
yeah,
an example of a portmanteau. And OB, which is the titular character, and Sessions, because he's undergoing a therapeutic sessions with a psychologist. Hint, hint.
Mhm. Yeah, based on you again, eh?
Yeah, and the book, of course, is going through, without giving out too much, is going through love concern, and he's trying to work around it while going through his day job as an art representative for artists. So he sells the original artwork of established and up and coming artists.
Mhm.
So that's touched on in the book in the first issue. And the main one of the main purposes of the book is to introduce the concept of therapy to a
Okay.
wider audience. Because in the Philippines, we haven't reached that point yet. We're in, your two friends are having coffee, and hey, what are you going to do this afternoon? Oh, I'm off to see my therapist. We're not there yet.
Yeah, yeah, we're not.
If
We're not.
somebody, we're not. So
Um,
there's a lot of
Maybe because we have family and friends, beside us more often than not, and they get to be our. Uh, we get to dump all our issues on them, and they get to do the same for us. So we're more like therapists for one another.
right. So sounding board, more sounding
There
board
you go.
for.
That was the word I was looking for. Sounding board.
So that's what this book does, CJ. It
Mhm.
it opens up what is therapy, and if that's something that be open to trying, not necessarily with me,
Mhm.
but if it's allows them to seek help from other mental health practitioners, then the book did its job.
Yeah,
So that's
and
the underlying theme.
and because of the pandemic, people are obviously going to be looking into their own mental health a little bit more now than not. Most especially for people who live alone, have
Right.
nobody to talk to, and heaven forbid, if in case they have no one to talk to, they don't even have internet. So how are they going to get how are they going to get the information that they need, and also the support that they need? So in this time of the pandemic, certainly mental health is paramount, and alongside, of course, your physical health as well. um, and that's also another thing that creatives don't really touch upon, or maybe talk about as much, with regards to your mental health and a balance with your physical health. I mean, here you are creating a comic, creating a book, and you pour everything out, heart and soul, into what it is that you're writing, but you also can't deny the need to do a little bit of exercise, to do a little bit of jogging, right? So you can at least crank things up, and you're not going to be seated on your comfortable chair, or your gaming chair all day, and just
Yeah, a
having
lot
to
of people,
plot
their
one.
gaming chairs. Wow, I've seen like in some of the setups of a lot of people.
Do you have a
So
gaming chair, or do you plan to get a gaming chair?
no, no, you know, I when my son wants a gaming chair.
Uh-oh. Oh, I'm sorry. Gave him an idea.
When the pandemic started, ironically, I popped in one of my old PS4 games,
Okay.
Fallout, which is kind of ironic considering our current circumstances. But after a while, I realized I wasn't as productive as I could have
Mhm.
been. So I just completely stopped playing. I was playing for like 2 or 3 weeks straight, and
Wow.
I was putting in my hours, if you know what I mean. And
I
I
know. I
felt,
know. Do you feel guilty when you play more than you create more? Do you play more than you create, rather?
yeah, it was taking away, and I think Hall of Famer Tracy McGrady in a podcast said it best. If you go into this pandemic and you come out of it and you haven't improved, it's a waste. Of
Mm.
course, I'm paraphrasing what Tracy is saying,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I get his point. You know, this is the time when we're in. We've always said, if I had more time, I'd learn how to do that or I'd do this.
more time to
Guys,
cook, more time
now
to
is the time.
learn.
You have the time to do it.
Yeah, exactly. More opportunities for you to crank it up and write more words than not, right? For those who are, let's say, new to the industry, or probably would want to do this for a career, or they just feel that they have to listen to their muse and release their own comics. How about turning the tables and ask, what advice can you give them, since you were given advice by the late and great Jerry Allen?
Uh, okay. Okay. Number one, if they wanna write it down. Number one
Oh yeah,
is
right. And we
you
can
have.
always watch this again.
I have a notebook rule, and a notebook rule is not the same as a cell phone rule. No, if you write something down, the chances of you remembering it are greater. So this the notebook rule is you gotta bring the notebook wherever you go. Now, even if it's that could be your bedside dream journal notebook, but you have one notebook that is everything. And then if you get an idea, put it down because that idea can very easily disappear as fast as it came in. All right, doesn't mean that that's going to be
You
your
wake up.
next. That doesn't mean that's going to be your next big book.
Yeah.
That could be you could attach that to something else that will become something else later on. Rule number two is you have to read, read, and read.
Yes.
And you should not only don't only read the authors or the creators that you like or the artists, the books of the artists that you write.
Mm-hmm.
Read something that's out of your comfort zone because who knows, that might spark something else. You might get
Exactly.
it might give you a different writing voice, so to speak, because that's the only way that you're really going to get the writing voice.
Right,
Or
right. I mean, if you love Stephen King, you may want to branch out and read Jane Austen. I don't know. I know two different kinds of writer, but I get what you mean.
so, what else? Never throw ideas away, no matter how absurd they are. Just write them down. You
You
never
can,
know.
you might use it.
You're right. You're right. Since we're talking about Ghostbusters earlier, I found this out a few years ago. You know the line of Egon. I have something very important to tell you. Don't cross the streams.
Yes.
It was in the hotel before he
Uh-huh.
fought the first ghost. When they said that, the script wasn't done yet. They had no idea what they were going to use that for, if any. And that played a very big role towards the end of the film. So you never know where you might be able to attach this to this, and
Yeah, yeah.
this other idea to become something good. This is very important. The even page rule: 2, 4, 6, 8, depending on how long your comic book is.
Hmm.
If you're doing a 24-page book, which is it's just my standard because that's how I used to read comics back then. They were 24 pages.
But is that the U.S. industry standard, 24? Or
US standard now is 20.
okay.
There was a time before it was I think it was in the teens, and I have no idea how you're going to tell a compelling story with limited number of pages. Having more allows you to have the splash page, the double splash page,
Yeah.
for visual effect. But
And
if you're
probably ads.
limited, sorry, say again.
Probably ads.
Yeah,
More ads.
because if you don't have it, that's every panel that you have in a page. That's what you call real estate. You
Hmm.
have to justify your use for it and see if it propels your story forward. Because if it doesn't, then that's not supposed to be there. So another piece of advice I can give is don't think of writing. This is a Tom King advice. Don't think of writing your Why the Last Man stories, which are like 60 books. Start out with one.
Yeah,
So one, and then one, you go to two. Uh, it's nice to think that you can write your Why the Last Man story, but it, it nobody's gonna read it
yeah.
because you have to build currency.
I have that in the bin, but it still needs to be read. So it's like, ay, ay, ay.
Oh,
The reading
if you
pile.
read the first issue, a lot of people consider it to be the perfect issue, the perfect lead on. Because after it's your hook issue. That's what issue one of Lindol is. That's why there's a little action, there's a little description of the characters. It's your hook issue.
Yeah,
A hook issue is very important because that's what's gonna give you currency for your readers to pick up issue 2 and 3 and so on.
exactly.
That's what issue one of Brian K. Vaughan and Pia Guerrera's Why the Last Man is. That first issue. So
Okay.
if you read, I promise you read the first one, you're gonna go read the others.
All right. I just have to dig it up. Dig it up from the pile.
Read book aside from reading books, watch movies. And if you watch movies, let's say I'm going to shift a little bit. I'm going to go into sports. Let's say basketball. If you watch basketball, NBA basketball as a casual fan, you'll enjoy it. But if you look at it from a coach's lens, you start breaking down the plays. This player is supposed to be here. They're supposed to do this. This person is supposed to swing and move to this area. You see the game differently. If you're going to watch movies from the lens of a writer, you will see the movie differently.
Yes.
You will see, why is this scene here? Oh, this is going to play into this later on. So they're like establishing, like
You start
you'll
to
know.
become more analytical, and you kind of like, I guess you try to second guess the plot and why a specific character came up, or it might even actually be a red herring.
Right. So I watched a movie recently. I completely forgot the title. It was not that important. It's a 2019 zombie film starring Kylo Ren, Peter Venkman, the Ancient One. Yeah, the
Oh,
actors are
God.
playing. It's a star-studded film,
Yeah.
and there
It's
were
an old film, I take it.
right, yeah. They, just like in some town, and it involved zombies and aliens and so on.
I
I
gotta look
yeah,
it up. I gotta look it
yeah.
up.
I mean, if somebody wants to watch it, they can watch it. But there was one aspect there which involved three characters that they gave screen time to. There was no resolution for those characters, and I couldn't stop talking about it. I said, "Why put them there if they're not gonna serve a purpose?"
Yeah, they're not gonna do anything. It's gonna be. Were they at least fodder for the zombies?
No, I think they survived. They mentioned that
It
we're
did.
gonna go to a safe place, but they never showed the safe place that they went to. You know what I mean? It was
Okay.
well, that,
Poor premise for sequel for movie number 2. Maybe no plans to do that. Yeah, there are some, how should we say, loose ends sometimes in the writing that stories fail to capitalize on, or fail to do some follow up. Maybe they were hoping that the follow up be done in the next installment, but alas, if your first part or first installment is not up to snuff, then you might not get number 2.
or sometimes your first or sequel may be good, but it doesn't hit the numbers that they envision having, and it never happens. A good
That
example would be Tron Legacy. I thought that was an excellent movie, and I think they're planning on doing a sequel, but it's just the spacing is just too long between all the movies. So
I know that's another thing. I mean, I guess you have to work with budget. You have to work with with actors availability, and now with the current pandemic that we're experiencing, I'm sure that Hollywood is going to be a little bit more selective on what movies to churn out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have more remakes than originals moving forward, because at least you know uh, they don't need to to think too much out of the box and give somebody something new, but because for them we're rehashing something that's established, we're giving actually something new and in a shinier new box at that.
Do you know what, Tron? I discussed this a long time ago, but it's very relevant now. Do you know what Tron Legacy? What's its legacy is? You
Mhm.
have you made Kurt Russell young, which
Yeah,
allows us to have. I think he's been young twice as Ego, as a young Ego in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. So he's been young
he
twice.
was a young. Yeah, he was used there as well.
Michael Douglas
Technology,
as
movie
Henry
magic.
Pym has been made young. You know, they age them. They. My point here is it's gonna come a point in time if all of these actors are no longer and their estate signs off on it, you can have your perfect movie with your perfect casting. At what age of the actor you want them to be?
Right, right.
That's what Tron Legacy for me was able to do. Um, I also have three books to suggest to your readers if they plan to go into writing comics. Um, there's a fourth one, but I can't recommend it because I have not seen it yet. So Stanley's a book on writing comics.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
Words for
I
Pictures,
hope it's available
Art
for
and
people who want to get.
Business. Words for Pictures, The Art and Business of Writing Comics and Graphic Novels. This is by Brian Michael Bendis. This came out in 2014.
Oh, Bendis, everyone's favorite.
So, so that there was a drought in terms of how to write comic books for a while. So Bendis was the next big name that came up with one.
Hmm.
And so the only reason why I mentioned this, it's available in Amazon. You can get it digitally. You don't have to
Okay.
wait for the physical copy.
Yes, for Kindle.
Uh, this other one you probably have seen it around in National Bookstore back in the day. The DC Comics Guide to Writing Comics. So the DC's Guide to Inking, the
Yeah.
DC's Guide to Drawing. So it was there. Like people would browse through it and then they'd leave it there. Then it went on sale. I finally got it. This is written
Yay.
by the late Denny O'Neil, the
Oh,
collaborator
yes.
of Neil Adams in Batman.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Is that book with you, like beside you? You can hold it up, or no? Is it?
oh, that book it's in storage, so
Okay. All right.
I don't have it for Bendis. It's in digital format. And this last month, Paul Copperberg
Hmm.
uh, released his illustrated guide to writing comics. That I highly recommend. You can probably get it directly from him online on Facebook or on Amazon if it's available.
Okay,
That
that's
I highly recommend because the way he wrote it, it's very linear in
mhm.
terms of this is the first step, this is what you're supposed to do, these are writing exercises. So I said, where was this when I started?
Well.
Because I
Lucky
had
for
to
you,
learn
we're gonna start
osmosis,
now.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Wait. So, what's his last name again? Paul
Copperberg.
Kupperberg.
K Kupperberg.
Or Kupperberg. Okay. I will certainly look it up and have more stuff to read on my Kindle. Yay!
Um, Paul did, there was a story a while back. What if Archie had married Veronica, or what if Archie had married Betty?
Uh-huh.
So he was the one who wrote that.
Ah.
He's
Okay.
also written many other things, but I think that was important to highlight because he's written different genres and he's very versatile as a writer.
I'm trying to
He's a,
open my Kindle at the moment so I can like show you if I got the book right. Oh wait. Do you name your electronic devices? Because I certainly name my Kindle. I name him Vlad. Obviously from Vlad Dracula. My laptop is named Amberly. That's based on a character that Terry Brooks has written for Elfstones of Shannara, and my other phone is named Talbot, David Talbot from Anne Rice. So I don't know. Do you name your electronic devices?
not the electronic devices, but I've named. I have. We have two cars. I've named
Okay.
each of the cars a name.
Aha.
The first one is Dimitri.
Okay.
Okay, that's the Mazda hatchback that I drive. Then the SUV uh, it's Sergey. It's supposed to be Sergey, but
Yeah.
it's
So
Sergey. And the reason for that is these are the aliases, the Russian aliases of Ethan Matthew Hunt of Mission Impossible
there you
in the
are.
movies.
Yeah.
So, so I as much as I'd like to use that in my books, it's such a foreign name; it'll never get in.
It's not gonna
You know,
it's not gonna resonate. My first
it
car
will.
was I named my cars as well. My first car, which was blue, I named it Gandalf. The second one was
Gandalf
gray.
blue, blue
Gandalf
robe.
blue. But wasn't there? There was a blue wizard. I forgot his name though, because Radagast is brown, Saruman is white, Gandalf was gray. I forgot the name of the blue wizard, but he never shows up. But he was just referenced. Uh, Second car was gray. I named him. I used the Elvish name of Aragon, which is jeez, end of my tip of my tongue. But yeah, the third one, which is a van now, I call it Grand because it's longer. It's an Innova, so it's basically the hammer of Sauron. So most of it are just Tolkien names for my cars.
Tolkien, if you want to talk about plotting, that's the guy that you look at. Over several years, he even mapped out the entire world.
Yeah,
So
can you
that is
imagine,
impressive in itself.
if ever he has a series Bible, how thick that is going to be?
And this is what I mean by currency. He had following, he had fans. If one is ever to read through the first book, through
Hmm.
the book version for Fellowship, you're going through 10 pages and they're still on the horse.
Yeah, it's like
you, know, you,
that,
you, you
they're
know,
not
and
moving.
you can only do that if you have currency with your reader base. They trust you
Hmm.
that you're gonna get to your point no matter how long it takes.
Alone, no matter how many pages it takes. That's it.
Right.
Well, you know what, Ted, I know that you have to go, and if we could, talk for another hour, I would love to. I, and along with the viewers and the listeners, will certainly consider those words of wisdom under advisement, and perhaps even speed up my own creative process for my own comics. So, yeah, shameless
Don't
plug.
don't sell yourself short. I mean, I'm pretty sure what your viewers and your listeners know. You're published as well. So
Uh, in a way, well, but not in the comic book area.
yeah,
More for books and all.
you, you
In
know.
case our viewers and listeners would want to know more about you or Lindol and other future projects, where can they find you online?
Oh, okay. So they can check out the Lindol website at www.lindolcomics.com.
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
LINDOLCOMICS.com. I'm also on social media at um, Facebook, Tedi Villasor, and the same with Instagram, Tedi Villasor. It's one
Right.
word.
And
TDIVILLASOR.
yeah, and Lindol also has its own page on Facebook as well, and an Instagram account.
Right, right, yeah. So if you follow that, there's a trail. You'll know where
Oh yeah.
everybody else is.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. So thank you, Ted. That is a wrap for today. Thank you for being here. Till the next podcast. Keep creating, and we will keep reading. Everybody, stay safe. Ted, you stay safe, stay creative, and namaste. And I'll see you again soon. Till the next one.
Take care.
Bye,
Yeah.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye.